The Roman Empire conquered the Mediterranean without the one weapon every other ancient military considered essential for victory, the bow and arrow. Instead of killing from a distance, Roman generals focused on closing the gap immediately, turning the battlefield into a brutal, claustrophobic meat grinder. This diagram illustrates the effective kill radius of a Roman legionary compared to an enemy archer. The Roman kit was built specifically for that tiny inner circle, utilizing a short 18-inch sword called a gladius and a massive 22-pound curved shield called a scutum. As the schematic animates, you can see how this system functioned like an assembly line of death. Recruits spent 4 months doing nothing but stabbing wooden posts to build muscle memory for short, efficient thrusts. In battle, they locked shields, ground forward, and seamlessly rotated exhausted men to the back while fresh soldiers stepped to the front. The Roman military was a highly tuned, closed-loop machine. Archers require open space and distance from the enemy. Forcing bowmen into this hyper-optimized, forward-pushing infantry block would have broken their entire operating system. Beyond the tactical mismatch, Rome faced a deeper psychological blocker, virtus. This strictly defined Roman concept of manhood and honor demanded face-to-face combat. Looking at idealized statues like this heavily armored Augustus, we see the physical, heroic ideal of Roman leadership. For a Roman citizen, proving that honor meant taking physical battle scars from sword-to-sword combat, and those scars were a direct requirement for political viability and social status in the Senate. Shooting an enemy from 50 yards away provided no physical risk, and therefore 0 political points. Greeks and Romans alike mocked archery, associating the bow with cowardice, femininity, or the poorest classes of citizens who simply couldn't afford bronze armor. The Roman political system actively punished and mocked anyone who prioritized the bow, turning a cultural preference into a lethal strategic blind spot. Even if a pragmatic Roman general wanted to deploy archers, the physical loadout of the legion made it impossible. This scale graphic shows the exact weight distribution of a Roman soldier's 90-pound kit. Every man carried his armor, that 22-pound shield, pickaxes, fortification stakes, several days of rations, and a heavy throwing javelin called a pilum. Adding a wooden bow, heavy arrows, and delicate spare strings to this loadout would have physically overloaded the infantryman. Watching this chart zero out against a 2-minute timeline highlights another major constraint. A trained archer empties a standard 30-arrow quiver in about 120 seconds of intense fighting, requiring dedicated supply carts that Rome simply didn't employ. Then there was the manufacturing bottleneck. Italy lacked the proper dense hardwoods. To get real stopping power, ancient militaries used composite bows, complex weapons layered with horn, wood, and animal sinew, glued together with fish bladders. Those bows required up to 4 years of curing in specific humidity to properly set. Finally, the mechanics of archery conflicted with Roman defensive stances. The interlocking shields of the famous testudo, or tortoiseshell formation, completely blocked a friendly archer's line of sight, making it impossible to aim without hitting their own men in the back of the head. Adopting the bow meant throwing away their entire supply chain, their highly specialized equipment roster, and 400 years of tactical doctrine. In 53 BC, the Romans met a horrific reality check. The general Marcus Crassus marched 20,000 heavily armored legionaries into the desert to hunt the Parthian Empire. This relief depicts exactly what destroyed them. Parthian horse archers circled the dense Roman infantry blocks, executing the Parthian shot, firing composite bows backward over their horses' rumps while retreating at a full gallop. Crassus's men couldn't close the distance to use their swords. 20,000 Roman soldiers died, and another 10,000 were captured, slowly picked apart by enemies they could never physically reach. Instead of adapting and training their own citizens to shoot, Roman writers doubled down, calling the Parthians cowards who refused real combat. The stigma against the bow held firm. So Rome engineered a workaround to get the archery skills they needed without touching the shameful weapon. They wrote checks. The military built out an auxilia system, hiring foreign mercenaries from Crete, Syria, and Numidia, men who had generational experience with the bow. This system was highly effective and entirely hypocritical. Non-citizens did the dangerous, life-saving work of softening the enemy lines from a distance. Then the Roman heavy infantry swooped in for the final close-quarters kill to claim the political glory back home. As we pan across the rigid, heavily armed statues of the tetrarchs, we enter the defensive era of the late Roman Empire. Between the 3rd and 6th centuries AD, Rome stopped expanding. They were now tasked with holding thousands of miles of stretched borders. The threat profile shifted. The frontiers were battered by massive, rapid invasions from steppe nomads like the Huns and the heavy cavalry of the Sassanid Persians. These were militaries built on the mobility of the horse and the lethal range of the bow. This colossal head belongs to Constantine, one of the late emperors who finally discarded the old honor codes. Facing total collapse, Rome restructured its military, creating highly mobile field armies and aggressively recruiting frontier archers directly into the core ranks. They embraced total technological upgrades. The Romans adopted the Hunnish asymmetric composite bow, which featured longer upper limbs specifically optimized for horseback shooting, and implemented the four-horn saddle to improve a rider's stability during a charge. By the Byzantine era, the classic sword and shield legionary was effectively obsolete. The core strike force of the remaining Roman field army was now exactly what the early Republic had mocked, the mounted horse archer. Rome survived by choosing absolute pragmatism over rigid tradition. To defeat their greatest enemies, they eventually became them.